LinkedIn marketing. An overview of what we're going to be discussing in part 1 is here on the agenda. We're going to start with an introduction to give a high-level overview of how to approach the bottom of the funnel. Then we're going to get into message and conversation ads, which are the LinkedIn ads that go directly to people's inboxes and look kind of like you're getting a message. Then we're going to talk about Sales Navigator and outreach, so doing things like cold email, LinkedIn message automation, connection requests, that sort of stuff. Then we're going to get into image and video ads, which are the more standard types of advertisements that people usually think of when they talk about LinkedIn marketing. Then we're going to get into text ads, which were the original type of ads that LinkedIn had way back when I started in 2011 that look kind of like Google ads but have little images. And then we'll talk about some other concepts. So part 1 focuses on lead generation. Now, whenever you create a new campaign in LinkedIn, there are basically 3 buckets of objectives that you need to take a look at. And this is one of the biggest considerations that you need to have when you start advertising on LinkedIn is, what is the objective that you want? All too often people jump into strategies and tactics, but they don't really know where they want to go. So this is the high-level decision you need to make. And what we're going to do in Section 1 is we're going to focus primarily on lead generation as an objective as one of the subcategories of conversions. Now, there's one ad type, the text ads, where we pretty much have to use the website conversions option at the bottom of the funnel. But for the most part, we're using lead generation, and the lead generation objective is going to allow us to use the lead capture form in LinkedIn itself rather than needing to send people to our website or landing page. Now, at a high level, when we look at budgeting, which is like the biggest decision you're going to make with your media spend, we need to think about, well, what do the most successful business-to-business companies do? And those that are really fast growing, they basically allocate their budget in 2 different ways. So one is sales activation, or what you might call capturing demand. So this is the conventional demand generation, lead generation. Let's generate a lot of revenue really quickly. Let's get people into sales conversations, that type of marketing. On the other hand, there's what you might call brand marketing, creating demand, and that's an aspect of marketing that is all too often neglected, particularly by large business-to-business companies. But you can see that the split is almost 50-50. Now, the optimal is 54% of your budget being allocated to capturing demand, so things like demand generation, and 46% being spent on creating demand. Now, what I would actually say is if you're in a small startup, this percentage should actually be higher. You're probably looking at more like 75%, potentially even higher. Allocate it to things that are going to generate revenue basically in the next 6 months, or generate pipeline revenue, sales qualified opportunities in the next 6 months. And then you might allocate, say, 25% towards long-term growth, at least focused on long-term growth. And that's things like building your brand, building your community, working through dark social channels, stuff like that. So what we're going to do in part 1, because this is where a slight majority of your budget and energy should be focused, is really on capturing demand, short-term revenue growth. Now, it might seem a little bit counterintuitive. Why am I starting at the bottom of the funnel? And to explain that, we're going to use this framework from Salesforce. Now, on the left here is a conventional marketing funnel. You start with the cold leads, which is like your largest quantity of prospects. Then you move and start focusing on the warm prospects. And then at the bottom, you focus on the hot ones, the ones that are about to buy. But what Salesforce does is they flip this funnel on its head and they say, well, maybe what we should really do is focus on the hot leads first, right? The low-hanging fruit, the people that could be buying very soon. And then we can start worrying about the people that maybe potentially will buy in the midterm. And then after that, we'll focus on the cold leads, the people that may buy in the long term. Now, what Salesforce is really talking about is emails. Like, where should you focus your emails? But I'm going to extrapolate this and say that at a high level, this is really what you should be doing. And the reason is because if you don't have a lot of resources and you don't have a lot of patience. So let's say you're a small company with a low budget or a mid-sized company that needs to generate revenue this year or this quarter. Really, you need to focus on those activities that are going to generate revenue quickly. And that is the bottom of the funnel. That is those hot leads. And that's what we're going to be talking about in this part of the course. And then next, if you have time and you know that your company is going to be around for a couple of years and you know that you can carve out a portion of your budget and allocate it towards capturing demand in the midterm, then you can start worrying about the warm leads and then ultimately the cold leads, which you might reach through long-term thought leadership and stuff like that. All too often, there's a problem that companies make. So small companies, what they do is they start at the top of the funnel. They generate all sorts of cool brand marketing, thought leadership, but it never actually converts to revenue. And the reason it doesn't is because you need to first build a system to capture demand at the bottom of the funnel, and you also need to allow enough time for this to convert to revenue. And for small companies, unfortunately, they just can't really focus much here. Large companies have the reverse problem. So often they got large or they got to the mid-size by focusing on demand generation on the hot leads. They generated revenue and then they think, okay, well, that worked in the past. So let's just keep doing that. Let's just keep doing what's measurable, what's been proven. Really, they're better off getting a much larger portion of people into their funnel by focusing on those cold leads at the top of the funnel here. So let's focus on the hot leads in this section. Now, the framework that I like to use for business-to-business marketing, and this framework could also apply if we're just talking about building a LinkedIn advertising campaign or a LinkedIn marketing campaign, is we want to think about creating ads and content for each stage of awareness. And I've broken the stages of awareness into 6 sections. So we have the top of the funnel, which has 2 sections, the middle of the funnel, the MOFU, which has 2 sections, and the bottom of the funnel, the BOFU, which also has 2 sections. So let's talk about the TOFU, top of funnel. First, we have people that are brand unaware. Now, when I talk about your brand, I'm not talking about your product. I'm not talking about your features. I'm not talking about those nitty-gritty things. What I'm talking about is literally your brand. So your logo, your mascot, your slogan, the kinds of things that do people remember them. Whether or not they understand how your product works or what it does, do they know your brand? Do they know your logo? A good example of this would be something like Loom. I was looking for screen capture software recently, and I saw Loom. I didn't really know what they did, but I recognized the logo, and I said, oh, okay, well, I'll try that out. I recognize the name. Okay, so that's brand unaware, people that don't know your name, they don't know your logo, etc. Now, we have another category of people at the top of the funnel that aren't really aware of the problem that you solve, or they're not convinced that whatever problem you solve is a priority. It's something they should really put at the top of their priority list and act on it now. So next, as we move into the middle of the funnel, we have people that are category unaware. So they're familiar with the problem that they have, but they don't necessarily know that your product category, and maybe that's chatbots, maybe that's certain manufacturing automation equipment, whatever that category is that you and your competitors are in, they aren't necessarily convinced that's going to solve their problem or is the best solution to their problem. Now we're getting into what most people understand, which is being product unaware. Do people understand your use cases, your jobs to be done, your features, your benefits? Are they convinced you're better than the competition? Are they convinced that you can solve their problem not better than the competitors can? Now, a lot of people understand this, but they get a little bit wishy-washy in understanding that sometimes what people really need to be convinced of is that the problem is worthy of attention and that the category in general is worthy of attention. Now, at the bottom of the funnel, we have free offer unaware. So your free offer is going to be some examples that I have below here. It's your consultation, your trial, your review, your audit. You might call it something else, but basically it's the thing that's designed to either get to a sales conversation or sort of get into that sales activity mindset. And this is really what we're focusing on in this section, is how do we get people into those sales conversations? How do we get people talking to us into the buying mindset where they can be persuaded to make a purchase or at least trial our product and give it a shot to see if it solves their problem? Now, all too often what companies do is they only do this, but they kind of neglect the rest of the funnel, because constantly pushing something like a demo, which is a free offer on aware marketing tactic, is only going to be effective to an extent. Now, at the very bottom of the funnel, we have paid offer on aware. So people that maybe aren't aware of your contract terms, they don't know about pricing negotiations. And really, this is the space of your account executives, the people that are going to put together the right proposal that will ultimately be agreed upon by the prospect. Now, there is a small role that we can play in marketing here on the advertising side through things like retargeting and stuff, but it's primarily where sales is going to have the most strength. So this bottom of funnel, which is primarily where we're trying to promote our offer, like our demo or trial or consultation, etc. The style, the aesthetic of this type of marketing is not super artistic. It's not these off-the-wall advertisements that you see from creative agencies. It's less emotional. It can be somewhat emotional. It can be somewhat artistic. But first and foremost, it's rational. The reason that it is rational is because what we're trying to do at the bottom of the funnel is drive short-term decisions and responses. And the things that drive people to make short-term decisions is really kind of rational choices. Now, in the long term, we're more focused on really embedding ourselves into the long-term memory of people and associating our brand with some sort of category or buying situation, give it some long-term context. And in cases like this at the top of the funnel, our marketing can be more creative, less rational, more emotional. But at the bottom, it's more, why should I act now? And what kind of benefit are you going to give me? In the next section, what we're going to do is we're going to get specifically into two very bottom of funnel advertising types, which are going to be message and conversation ads.